Okay. Wait, no, that's the wrong one. There you go. Wrong one. Wrong one. Wrong one. Okay. 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 Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. Many hellos. Many hellos on this fine evening or morning, etc. Hello. Hello, 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 hello. We have makeup stream number 1. Makeup stream number 1. I plan on stopping a little bit earlier than I originally planned. The plan is to go until 5:30. And I have 9 stories prepared. I didn't prepare text for it. I probably should have thought about adding text. Panic. I'm labeling the source panic. Because I didn't think very far ahead. Use Google font. There you go. Anyways, we got 9 stories to tell this morning. 9 whole stories. 9 whole stories. That is how many. The text is gonna go really big for a second. Don't mind it. Don't mind it. The text is gonna be huge for a few seconds. As I adjust it. I'm gonna change colors. I'm gonna change the text colors. The last stories. Well, 3.5 hours is a lot of reading. 3.5 hours is a lot of reading. So, kinda makes sense that there's a lot of stories. Is that gonna look good? Should be good. Okay. Okay. Anyways, as the title suggests, the first story that I will be reading is The Saucy Boy. Hope my thoughts holds out? Yeah, me too. I will do my best. I'll do my best. Hopefully it's fine. I'm really hoping it's fine. I have 1 water bottle, 1 cup of water, and an energy drink. But if that doesn't last me throughout the whole thing, I'll probably turn on the kettle and get some hot water instead to help. And then if I'm still really sleepy, if the energy drink doesn't help me stay awake, then I'll probably make a latte or something. Have a little extra caffeine. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, thank you guys for the well wishes. We'll see. I'll do my best. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. Okay? Anyways, we have our first story. The first story is called The Saucy Boy. And indeed, it is a little saucy, but not as saucy as you'd think. So maybe the story should really be called A Little Saucy Boy. Actually, no, that sounds wrong. The Slightly Saucy Boy is what the story should be called. The story should be called The Slightly Saucy Boy. You guys ready? You guys ready to hear the story? Got 1 story so far. Story time? Yeah, story time. It's story time. That's right. That's right. That's right. You guys seem to be ready. We'll start in 8 seconds. And 2, 1. Okay. Once upon a time. Actually, can I make the text bigger? Sorry. I just realized I can't read very well. No. There you go. Okay. That's much better. There you go. Once upon a time, there was an old poet. One of those good old poets. One evening, as he was sitting at home, there was a terrible storm going on outside. The rain was pouring down, but the old poet sat comfortably in his chimney corner, where the fire was burning and apples were roasting.
There will not be...
Wait, there will not... No.
There will not be a dry thread left on the poor people who are out in this weather,
he said. Oh, open the door! Wait. Oh, open the door! I'm so cold and wet through! Called the little child outside. It was crying and knocking on the door, while the rain was pouring down and the wind was rattling all the windows.
Poor creature,
said the poet, and got up and opened the door. Before him stood a little boy. He was naked, and the water flowed from his long fair locks. He was shivering with cold. If he had not been let in, he most certainly would have perished in the storm.
Poor little thing,
said the poet, and took him by the hand.
Come to me, I will soon warm you. You shall have some wine and an apple, for you are such a pretty boy.
And he was, too. His eyes sparkled like two bright stars, and although the water flowed down his fair locks, they still curled quite beautifully. He looked like a little angel, but was pale with cold, and trembling all over. In his hand he held a splendid bow, but it had been entirely spoilt by the rain, and the colors of the pretty arrows had run into one another by getting wet. The old man sat down by the fire, and taking the little boy on his knee, wrung the water out of his locks, and warmed his hands in his own. He then made some hot spiced wine, which quickly revived him, so that with reddening cheeks he sprang up on the floor and danced around the old man.
You are a merry boy,
said the latter.
What is your name?
My name is Cupid, he answered. Don't you know me? There lies my bow. I shoot with that, you know. Look, the weather is getting fine again. The moon is shining.
But your bow was spoilt,
said the old poet. That would be very unfortunate, said the little boy, taking it up and looking at it. Oh, it is quite dry and it isn't damaged at all. The string is quite tight. I'll try it. So drawing it back, he took an arrow, aimed, and shot the good old poet right in the heart. Do you see now that my bow wasn't spoiled? He said, and, loudly laughing, ran away. What a naughty boy to shoot the old poet like that, who had taken him into his warm room, had been so good to him, and had given him the nicest wine and the best apple. The old poet lay upon the floor crying. He was really shot in the heart.
Oh, he cried, what a naughty boy this Cupid is! I shall tell all the good children about this, so they take care never to play with him, lest he hurt them.
And all the good children, both girls and boys, whom he told about this, were on their guard against wicked Cupid. But he deceives them all the same, for he is very deep. When the students come out of class, he walks beside them with a book under his arm and wearing a black coat. They cannot recognize him. And then, if they take him by the arm, believing him to be a student too, he sticks an arrow into their chest. And when the girls go to church to be confirmed, he's amongst them too. In fact, he's always after people. He sits in a large chandelier in the theater and blazes away, so that people think it is a lamp, but they soon find out their mistake. He walks about in the castle garden on the promenades. Yes, once he shot your father and your mother too in the heart. Just ask them, and you will hear them say, oh, he is a bad boy, this Cupid. And you must never have anything to do with him, for he is after everyone. Just think, he even shot an arrow at old grandmother, but that was such a long time ago. The wound has long been healed, but such things are never forgotten. Now you know what a bad boy this wicked Cupid is. And that's the end of the story. That is The Naughty Boy. First story complete. I mean, sorry, not Naughty Boy, Saucy Boy. He is a bad boy. It's a cute story. It's a cute retelling of Cupid from Roman stories. It's cute. It's cute. It's very cute. It's very, very cute. Maybe I should make the background transparent. What is chat like? Maybe not that. Very sweet. I'm not sure he's a sweet boy. I wouldn't say he's a sweet boy. I'd say, I'd say that he's... No, the story is sweet. Yes, it is. It's a cute story. Where am I gonna put this freaking title? I kinda want it to be here, but I need like a background for it. Anyways, yes. Such a cute retelling of how Cupid goes about, and you know, messes people up. Gets them to fall in love. All that malicious stuff. All that malicious stuff. All that malicious stuff. But yes, that's the first story. What do you guys think of it? Love? You? Yeah, love's pretty gross. You're right, you're right. Love is pretty gross, indeed. What do you guys think of the story, though? Did you like it? I thought it was cute. I thought it was cute. It was a good story, yeah. It was cute and it was short. Which are two different good things. I liked it. I liked it. I like mythology. So I think it was a nice mixture of the two. Didn't think Cupid was such a rascal? He has to be a rascal. I mean, think about it. Think about it. You have to be a rascal if you're going around shooting people. There's no way you're not a rascal if you don't shoot people. You know? Like, literally. There's no way. You're a miscreant through and through. You're a miscreant through and through. True? Yes, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Okay. The next story, I believe. Let me see the list. Next story is The Traveling Companion. Next story is The Traveling Companion. It starts off kind of sad. I'll admit. Oh, I can't tell. I don't want to say I can't tell. I meant that I can't spell. But, yes, next story. I really can't today. Next story is The Traveling Companion. I'm going to make the title smaller. Definitely make the title smaller. Oof. Okay. The Traveling Companion. This story is, is kind of flustering me. Are you sure you're not talking about yourself? Because that sounds like you're talking about yourself. I'm not too flustered. I'm only gonna be flustered over myself, if anything. Are you sure you're not getting flustered, sis? Because I think you are. I think you're a little flustered too. What'd you do? You didn't do anything. Don't worry about it. You did nothing. You did absolutely nothing but be yourself. Which isn't a bad thing. That's not right. That's not right at all. Let's see how that looks. No. You should make it darker. This? How's this look? It doesn't look very good, does it? Anyways, so it's about... The story is about... a man who... The story is about a man who... attends a funeral, and because of his attendance, he changes his fate very drastically. He really changes the course of his life, and at least I think that's the right story, but I'm pretty sure the story is, because I made sure to read all of these too this time, but I'm pretty sure the story is that he changes his life by attending a funeral that no one else would, I believe. So that is the story. Let's get to it. I think I finally fixed the text. So let's get to it. Actually, I'm gonna fix it just a little. I wish it would stop auto-aligning. Yeah, whatever. Anyways, starts off sad, but it has a good ending, I promise. Starts out sad, but it has a good ending. I'll take a drink of water before we start. So give me just a second. I apologize. Water. Yes, absolutely. Okay. we're gonna move on to the next story, okay? And go. Once John was very sad, for his father was so ill he had no hope of his recovery. John sat alone with a sick man in the little room, and the lamp had nearly burnt out, for it was late at night.
"You have been a good son, John,"
said the sick father,
"and God will help you on in the world."
He looked at him as he spoke with mild, earnest eyes, drew a deep sigh, and died. It appeared as if he still slept. John wept bitterly. He had no one in the world now, neither father, mother, brother, nor sister. Poor John! He knelt down by the bed, kissed his dead father's hand, and wept many, many bitter tears. But at last his eyes closed, and he fell asleep with his head resting against the hard bedpost. Then he dreamed a strange dream. He thought he saw the sun shining upon him, and his father alive and well, and even heard him laughing as he used to when he was very happy. A beautiful girl with a golden crown on her head and long shining hair gave him her hand, and his father said, "See what a bride you have won." Sorry. "See what a bride you have won. She is the loveliest maiden on the whole earth." Then he awoke, and all the beautiful things vanished before his eyes. His father lay dead in the bed, and he was all alone. Poor John! During the following week, the dead man was buried. The son walked behind the coffin which contained his father, whom he dearly loved, and would never again behold. He heard the earth fall on the coffin lid, and watched it till only a corner remained in sight. And at last it also disappeared. He felt as if his heart would break with its weight of sorrow, to those who stood round the grave saying a psalm. I don't know if it's psalm or psalm. I'm gonna say psalm, but I'm pretty sure it's not psalm. I'm pretty sure it's psalm. However, I'm not entirely sure. So you guys are free to correct me. But yeah, psalm. And the sweet holy tones brought tears into his eyes, which relieved him. The sun shone brightly down on the great trees. It's the other one, psalm, without the p. It's psalm, I assume. Is that what it is? You have no idea? Yes? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We sang a psalm, and the sweet holy tones brought tears into his eyes, which relieved him. The sun shone brightly down on the great trees, as if it would say, "You must not be sorrowful, John. Do you see the beautiful blue sky above you? Your father is up there, and he prays to the loving Father of all that you may do well in the future."
I will be good,"
said John. And then
I shall go to be with my Father in heaven. What joy it will be when we see each other again! How much I shall have to relate to him! How many things he will be able to explain to me of the delights of heaven, and teach me as he once did on earth. Oh, what joy it will be!
He pictured it all so plainly to himself that wow, I can't speak and say that he smiled even while the tears ran down his cheeks. The little birds in the chestnut trees twittered, "Tweet, tweet." They were so happy, although they had seen the funeral, for they seemed as if they knew that the dead man was now in heaven, that he had wings much larger and more beautiful than their own, and he was happy now, because he had been good here on earth, and they were glad of it. John saw them fly away out of the green trees into the wide world, and he longed to fly with them. But first he cut out a large wooden cross to place on his father's grave, and when he brought it there in the evening, he found... Wait, what? I lost my spot. He found the grave decked with gravel and flowers. Strangers had done this. They had known the good old father who was now dead, and who had loved him very much. Early the next morning, John packed up his little bundle of clothes, and placed all of his money, which consisted of $50 and a few shillings, in his girdle. With this he determined to try his fortune in the world. With this he determined to try his fortune in the world. But first he went into the churchyard, and by his father's grave he offered up a prayer and said farewell. As he passed through the fields, all the flowers looked fresh and beautiful in the warm sunshine, and nodded in the wind, as if they wished to say, "Welcome to the greenwood, where all is fresh and bright." Then John turned to have one more look at the old church, in which he had been christened in his infancy, and where his father had taken him every Sunday to hear the service and join in the singing of psalms. As he looked at the old tower, he espied the ringer standing at one of the narrow openings, with his little pointed red cap on his head, and shading his eyes from the sun with his bent arm. John nodded farewell to him, and the little ringer waved his red cap, laid his hand on his heart, and kissed his hand to him a great many times, to show that he felt kindly towards him, and wished him a prosperous journey. John continued on his journey, and thought all of the wonderful things that he should see in a large, beautiful world, till he found himself farther away from home than he had ever been before. He did not even know the names of the places he passed to, could scarcely understand the languages of the people he met, for he was far away in a strange land. The first night he slept on a haystack out in the fields, for there was no other bed for him, but it seemed to him so nice and comfortable that even a king need not wish for a better. The field, the brook, the haystack, with the blue sky above, formed a beautiful sleeping room. The green grass, with the little red and white flowers, was the carpet. The elder bushes and the hedges of the wild roses looked like garlands on the walls, and for a bath he'd have the clear, fresh water of the brook. While the rushes bowed their heads to him to wish him good morning and good evening, the moon, like a large lamp, hung high up in the blue ceiling, and he had no fear of its setting fire to his curtains. John slept here quite safely all night, and when he awoke, the sun was up, and the little birds were singing round him, singing, good morning, are you not up yet? They do be comfy? Yes, very comfy. It was Sunday, and the bells were ringing for church. As the people went in, John followed them. He heard God's word, joined in singing the psalms, and listened to the preacher. It seemed to him just as if he were in his own church, where he'd been christened, and had sung the psalms with his father. Out in the churchyard, there were several graves, and on some of them the grass had grown very high. John thought of his father's grave, which he knew at last would look like these, as he was not there to weed and attend to it. Then he set to work, pulling up the high grass, raised the wooden crosses which had fallen down, and replaced the wreaths which had been blown away from their places by the wind, thinking all the time, Perhaps someone is doing the same for my father's grave, as I am not there to do it. Outside the church door stood an old beggar, leaning on his crutch. John gave him his silver shillings, and then he continued his journey, feeling lighter and happier than ever. Towards the evening, the weather became very stormy, and he hastened on as quickly as he could to get shelter. But it was quite dark by the time he reached a little lonely church, which stood on a hill.
I will go in here,
he said,
and sit down in a corner, for I am quite tired and want rest.
So he went in and seated himself. Then he folded his hands and offered up his evening prayer, and was soon fast asleep and dreaming, while the thunder rolled and the lightning flashed without. When he awoke, it was still night, but the storm had ceased, and the moon shone upon him through the windows. Then he saw an open coffin standing in the center of the church, which contained a dead man waiting for burial. John was not at all timid. He had a good conscience, and he knew also that the dead can never injure anyone. It is living wicked men who do harm to others. Two had been brought to the church. Two such wicked persons stood now by the dead man who had been brought to the church to be buried. Their evil intentions were to throw away the poor dead body outside the church door, and not leave him to rest in his coffin.
Why do you do this?
Asked John, when he saw what they were going to do.
It is very wicked. Leave him to rest in peace in Christ's name.
Nonsense, replied the two dreadful men.
He has cheated us. He owed us money which he could not pay. Now he is dead, we shall not get a penny. So we mean to have our revenge and let him lie like a dog outside the church. I have only $50,
said John.
It is all I possess in the world, but I will give it to you if you will promise me faithfully to leave the dead man in peace. I shall be able to get on without the money. I have strong and healthy limbs, and God will always help me.
Why, of course, said the horrid men. If you will pay his debt, we will promise not to touch him. You may depend upon that. And then they took the money he offered them, laughed at him for his good nature, and went their way. There he laid the dead man's body back in the coffin, folded his hands, and took leave of it, and went away contentedly through the great forest. All around him he could see the prettiest little elves dancing in the moonlight, which shone through the trees. They were not disturbed by his appearance, for they knew he was good and harmless among men. They are wicked people, only who can never obtain a glimpse of the fairies. Some of them were not taller than the breadth of a finger, and wore golden combs in their long yellow hair. They were rocking themselves two together on the large dewdrops with which the leaves and the high grass were sprinkled. Sometimes the dewdrops would roll away, and then they fell down between the stems of the long grass, and caused a great deal of laughing and noise among the other little people. It was quite charming to watch them at play. Then they sang songs, and John remembered that he had learned those pretty songs when he was a little boy. Large speckled spiders, with silver crowns on their heads, were employed to spin suspension bridges and palaces from one hedge to another, and when the tiny drops fell upon them, they glittered in the moonlight like shining glass. This continued till sunrise. Then the little elves crept into the flower beds, and the winds seized the bridges and palaces, and fluttered them in the air like cobwebs. As John left the wood, a strong man's voice called after him.
"Hello, comrade. Where are you traveling?" "Into the wide world,"
He replied.
"I'm only a poor lad. I have neither father nor mother, but God will help me." "I'm going to the wide world also,"
replied the stranger.
"Shall we keep each other company?" "With all my heart,"
he said, and so they went on together. Soon they began to like each other very much, for they were both good. But John found out that the stranger was much more clever than himself. He had traveled all over the world and could describe almost everything. The sun was high in the heavens when they seated themselves under a large tree to eat their breakfast. At the same moment an old woman had came towards them. She was very old and almost bent double. She leaned upon a stick and carried on her back a bundle of firewood, which I see it fix itself. Okay. Well then. You terrible timing? No, you don't have terrible timing. Don't worry about it. You don't have terrible timing. It's just my internet being sucky. That's not your fault. Don't worry about it. It's not your fault, okay? Okay? Don't feel bad. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Many hellos to you, Nim. Many hellos. I'm going to figure out where I left off in the story real quick. Let's see. Where was I? At what point was I... if you guys remember, what was the last word I said before the Wi-Fi cut itself? He met the old woman? Okay. Thank you. She was very old and almost bent double. She leaned upon a stick and carried on her back a bundle of firewood which she had collected in the forest. Her apron was tied around it, and John saw 3 great stems of fern and some willow twigs peeping out. I just lost my spot as I was reading. Oh. Just as she came close to them, her foot slipped and she fell to the ground, screaming loudly. Poor old woman, she had broken her leg. John proposed directly that they should carry the old woman home to her cottage. The stranger opened his knapsack and took out a box, in which he said he had a salve that would quickly make her legs well and strong again, so that she would be able to walk home herself, as if her leg had never been broken. And all he would ask in return was the 3 fern stems which she carried in her apron. That's rather too high a price, said the old woman, nodding her head quite strangely. She did not seem at all inclined to part with the fern stems. However, it was not very agreeable to lie there with a broken leg, so she gave them to him, and such was the power of the ointment that no sooner had he rubbed her leg with it, than the old mother rose up and walked even better than she had done before. But then this wonderful ointment could not be bought at a chemist's.
"What can you do with those three fern rods?"
asked John of his fellow traveler.
"Oh, they will make capital brooms,"
said he.
"and I like them because I have strange whims sometimes."
Then they walked on together for quite a distance.
"How dark the sky is becoming,"
said John.
"and look at those thick, heavy clouds." "Those are not clouds,"
replied his fellow traveler.
"They are mountains, large, lofty mountains, on the tops of which we should be able to be above the clouds in the pure, fresh air. Believe me, it is delightful to ascend so high. Tomorrow we shall be there."
But the mountains were not so near as they appeared. They had to travel a whole day before they reached them, and pass through black forests and piles of rock as large as a town. The journey had been so fatiguing that John and his fellow travelers stopped to rest at a roadside inn so that they might gain strength for their journey on the morrow. In the large public room of the inn, a great many persons were assembled to see a comedy performed by the dolls. The showman had just erected his little theater, and the people were sitting round the room to witness the performance. Right in front, in the very best place, sat a stout butcher with a great bulldog by his side who seemed very much inclined to bite. He sat staring with all his eyes, and so indeed did everyone else in the room. And then the play began. It was a pretty piece, with a king and queen in it, who sat on a beautiful throne and had golden crowns on their heads. The chains to their dresses were very long, according to the fashion, while the prettiest of wooden dolls, with glass eyes and large moustaches, stood at the doors, and opened and shut them, that the fresh air might come into the room. It was a very pleasant play, not at all mournful, but just as the queen stood up and walked across the stage, the great bulldog, who should have been held back by his master, made a spring forward, and caught the queen in the teeth by the slender wrist, so that it snapped in two. This was a very dreadful disaster. The poor man who was exhibiting the dolls was very much annoyed and quite sad about his queen. She was the prettiest doll he had, and the bulldog had broken her head and shoulders off. But after all the people were gone away, the stranger, who came with John, said he could soon set her rights. And then he brought out his box and rubbed the doll with some real salve, with which he had cured the old woman when she had broken her leg. As soon as this was done, the doll's back became quite right again. Her head and shoulders were fixed on, and she could even move her limbs herself. There was now no occasion to pull the wires, for the doll acted just like a living creature, excepting that she could not speak. The man to whom the show belonged was quite delighted at having a doll who could dance of herself without being pulled by the wires. None of the other dolls could do this. During the night, I need a drink. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Where was I? During the night, when all the people at the inn were gone to bed, someone was heard to sigh so deeply and painfully, and the sighing continued for so long a time that everyone got up to see what could be the matter. The showman went at once to his little theater and found that it proceeded from the dolls, who all lay on the floor sighing piteously and staring with their glass eyes. They all wanted to be rubbed with the ointment so that, like the queen, they might be able to move of themselves. The queen threw herself on her knees, took off her beautiful crown, and holding in her hand, cried, "Take this from me, but do rub my husband and his courtiers." Though needs water? Yes, it is. Sorry about that, though. The poor man who owned the theater could scarcely refrain from weeping. He was so sorry that he could not help them. Then he immediately spoke to John's comrade, and promised him all the money he might receive at the next evening's performance, if he would only rub the ointment on 4 or 5 of his dolls. But the fellow traveler said he did not require anything in return, excepting the sword which the showman wore by his side. As soon as he received the sword, he anointed 6 of the dolls with the ointment, and they were able to immediately dance so gracefully that all the living girls in the room could not help joining in the dance. The coachman danced with the cook, and the waiters with the chambermaids, and all the strangers joined. Where was I? Even the tongs and the fire shovel made an attempt, but they fell down after the first jump. So after all, it was a very merry night. The next morning, John and his companion left the inn to continue their journey through the great pine forests and over the high mountains. They arrived at last at such a great height that towns and villages lay beneath them, and the church steeples looked like little specks between the green trees. They could see for miles round, far away to places they had never visited, and John saw more of the beautiful world than he had ever known before. The sun shone brightly in the blue firmament above, and through the clear mountain's air came the sound of the huntsman's horn, and the soft, sweet notes brought tears into his eyes. He could not help exclaiming,
How good and loving God is to give us all this beauty and loveliness in the world to make us happy.
His fellow travelers stood by with folded hands, gazing on the dark wood and the towns bathed in the warm sunshine. At this moment sounded over their heads sweet music. They looked up and discovered a large white swan hovering in the air and singing as never a bird sang before. But the song became weaker and weaker. The bird's head drooped, and he sunk slowly down and lay dead at their feet.
It is a beautiful bird,
said the traveler,
and these large white wings are worth a great deal of money. I will take them with me. You see now that a sword will be very useful.
So he cut off the wings. Oh, sorry, that was kind of the wrong voice.
It's a beautiful bird,
said the traveler,
and these large white wings are worth a great deal of money. I will take them with me. You now see now that a sword will be very useful.
There you go. That was the right voice. So he cut off the wings of the dead swan with one blow and carried them away with him. They now continued their journey over the mountains for many miles, till they at length reached a large city containing hundreds of towers that shone in the sunshine like silver. In the midst of the city stood a splendid marble palace, roofed with pure red gold, in which dwelt the king. John and his companion would not go into town immediately, so they stopped at an inn outside the town to change their clothes, for they wished to appear respectable as they walked through the streets. The landlord told them that the king was a very good man who never injured anyone, but as to his daughter, heaven defend us! She was indeed a wicked princess. She possessed beauty enough. Nobody could be more elegant or prettier than she was. But what of that? For she was a wicked witch. In consequence of her conduct, many noble young princes had lost their lives. Anyone was at liberty to make her an offer. Were he a prince or a beggar, it mattered not to her. She would ask him to guess 3 things which she had just thought of, and if he succeeded, he was to marry her, and be king all over the land when her father died. But he could not guess these 3 things. Then she ordered him to be hanged, or to have his head cut off. The old king, her father, was very much grieved at her conduct, but he could not prevent her from being so wicked, because he once said he would have nothing more to do with her lovers. She might do as she pleased. Each prince who came and tried the 3 guesses, so that he might marry the princess, had been unable to find them out, and had been hanged or beheaded. They had been warned in time, and might have left her alone if they would. The old king became at last so distressed at all these dreadful circumstances that for a whole day every year he and his soldiers knelt and prayed that the princess might become good, but she continued as wicked as ever. The old women who drank brandy would color it quite black before they drank it, to show how they mourned, and what more could they do. Wicked princess fights? Rape head chopping? Yep. It has a good ending though. This has a good ending, so don't worry. The story has a good ending.
What a horrible princess,
said John.
She ought to be well flogged. If I were the old king, I would have her punished in some way.
Just then they heard the people outside shouting, "Hurrah!" And looking out, they saw the princess passing by. She was so beautiful that everyone forgot her wickedness and shouted, "Hurrah!" 12 lovely maidens in white silk dresses, holding golden tulips in their hands, rode by her side on coal black horses. The princess herself had a snow-white steed, decked with diamonds and rubies. Her dress was of cloth and gold, and the whip she held in her hand looked like a sunbeam. The golden crown on her head glittered like the stars of heaven, and her mantle was formed with thousands of butterflies' wings sewn together. Yet she herself was more beautiful than all. When John saw her, his face became as red as a drop of blood, and he could scarcely say a word. The princess looked exactly like the beautiful lady with the golden crown, of whom he had dreamed on the night his father died. She appeared to him so lovely that he could not help loving her.
It could not be true,
He thought.
that she was really a wicked witch, who ordered people to be hanged or beheaded if they could not guess her thoughts. Everyone has permission to go and ask her hand, even the poorest beggar. I shall pay a visit to the palace,
He said.
I must go, for I cannot help myself.
Then they all advised him not to attempt it, for he would be sure to share the same fate as the rest. His fellow traveler also tried to persuade him against it, but John seemed quite sure of success. He brushed his shoes and his coat, washed his face and his hands, combed his soft flaxen hair, and then went out alone in the town, and walked to the palace.
Come in,
Said the king. John knocked at the door. John knocked at the door, John opened it, and the old king, in a dressing gown and embroidered slippers, came towards him. He had the crown on his head, carried the scepter in one hand and the orb in the other.
Wait a bit,
Said he, and he placed the orb under his arm so that he could offer the other hand to John. But when he found that John was another suitor, he began to weep so violently that both the scepter and the orb fell to the floor, and he was obliged to wipe his eyes with his dressing gown. Poor old king,
Let her alone.
he said.
You will fare just as badly as the others. Come, I will show you.
Then he led him out into the princess's pleasure gardens, and there he saw a frightful sight. On every tree hung 3 or 4 king's sons who had wooed the princess, but had not been able to guess the riddles she gave them. Their skeletons rattled in every breeze, so that the terrified birds never dared to venture into the garden. All the flowers were supported by human bones instead of sticks, and human skulls in the flower pots grinned horribly. It was really a doleful garden for a princess.
Do you see all this?
Said the old king.
Your fate will be the same as those who are here. Therefore, do not attempt it. You really make me very unhappy. I take these things to heart so very much.
You getting sleepy? So you're gonna head out soon? Good night? Good night now! Good night, good night, good night. Goodbye. Sleep well. Have a wonderful night. I hope you have a wonderful dreams, a wonderful rest, and a wonderful morning when you wake up. Goodbye. Thank you for stopping by. And yes, it is a sleeping stream, so you're free to go. Bye-bye. I'm gonna take a drink. Well, I'm gonna take a drink real quick, sorry. Okay. I'm gonna close my water bottle now. Sorry. Sorry. Let's see. John kissed the old king's hand and said he was sure it would be all right, for he was quite enchanted with a beautiful princess. Then the princess herself came riding to the palace yard with all her ladies, and he wished her
Good morning.
She looked wonderfully fair and lovely when she offered her hand to John, and he loved her more than ever. How could she be a wicked witch, as all the people asserted? He accompanied her into the hall, and the little pages offered them gingerbread nuts and sweetmeats. But the old king was so unhappy he'd eat nothing, and besides, gingerbread nuts were too hard for him. It was decided that John should come to the palace the next day, and when the judges and the whole of the counselors would be present, to try if he could to guess the first riddle. If he succeeded, he would have to come a second time, but if not, he would lose his life, and no one had ever been able to guess even one. However, John was not at all anxious about the result of his trial. On the contrary, he was very merry. He thought only of the beautiful princess, and believed that in some way he should have help. But how, he knew not, and did not like to think about it. So he danced along the high road as he went back to the inn, where he had left his fellow traveler waiting for him. John could not refrain from telling him how gracious the princess had been, and how beautiful she looked. He longed for the next day so much that he might go to the palace and try his luck at guessing the riddles. But his comrade shook his head and looked very mournful.
I do wish you well,
said he.
"We might have continued together much longer, and now I am likely to lose you, you poor dear John. I could shed tears, but I will not make you unhappy on the last night we may be together. We will be merry, really merry this evening. Tomorrow, after you are gone,
What?
Tomorrow, after you are gone, I shall be able to weep undisturbed."
That was kind of weird to say. I had to kind of fix it. It was very quickly known among the inhabitants of the town that another suitor had arrived for the princess, and there was great sorrow in consequence. The theater remained closed. The woman who sold sweetmeats tied crepe round the sugar sticks. Tied crepe round the sugar sticks. And the king and the priests were on their knees in the church. There was a great lamentation, for no one expected John to succeed better than those who had been suitors before. And the evening John's comrade prepared a large bowl of punch and said,
"Now, let us be merry, and drink to the health of the princess."
But after drinking 2 glasses, John became so sleepy that he could not keep his eyes open, and fell fast asleep. Then his fellow traveler lifted him gently out of his chair, and laid him on the bed, and as soon as it was quite dark, he took 2 large rings which he had cut from the dead swan, and tied them firmly to his own shoulders. Then he put into his pocket. What? Then he put into his pocket the largest of the 3 rods this is weird to say. Then he had put into his pocket the largest of the 3 rods, which he had obtained from the old woman who had fallen and broken her leg. After this, he opened the window and flew way over the town, straight towards the palace, and seated himself in a corner, under the window which he looked into the bedroom of the princess. The town was perfectly still when the clock struck 12:15. Presently, the window opened, and the princess, who had large black wings to her shoulders and a long white mantle, flew away over the city towards a high mountain. The fellow traveler, who had made himself invisible, so that she could not possibly see him, flew after her through the air, and whipped the princess with his rod, so the blood came whenever he struck her. Ah, it was a strange flight through the air. The wind caught her mantle, so that it spread out on all sides, like the large sail of a ship, and the moon shone through it. "How it hails, to be sure," said the princess, at each blow she received from the rod. It had served her right to be whipped. At last, she reached... Actually, I need another drink, sorry. I can feel the cough coming on that time. At last she reached the side of the mountain and knocked. The mountain opened with a noise like the roll of thunder, and the princess went in. The traveler followed her. No one could see him as he made himself invisible. They went through a long, wide passage. 1,000 gleaming spiders ran here and there on the walls, causing them to glitter as if they were illuminated with fire. They next entered a large hall built of silver and gold. Large red and blue flowers shone on the walls, looking like sunflowers in size, but no one could dare pluck them, for the stems were hideous poisonous snakes, and the flowers were flames of fire darting out of their jaws. Shining glowworms covered the ceiling, and sky blue bats flapped their transparent wings. Altogether the place had a frightful appearance. In the middle of the floor stood a throne supported by 4 skeleton horses, whose harness had been made by fiery red spiders. The throne itself was made of milk-white glass, and the cushions were light little black mice, each biting the other's tail. Over it hung a canopy of rose-colored spiders' webs, spotted with the prettiest silk green flies, which sparkled like precious stones. On the throne sat an old magician with a crown on his ugly head and a scepter in his hands. He kissed the princess on the forehead, seated her by his side on the splendid throne, and then the music commenced. Great black grasshoppers played the mouse organ, and the owl struck herself on the body instead of a drum. It was altogether a ridiculous concert. Little black goblins with false lights in their caps danced about the hall, but no one could see the traveler, and he had placed himself just behind the throne where he could see and hear everything. The courtiers who came in afterward looked noble and grand, but anyone with common sense could see what they really were, only broomsticks with couches for heads. the magician had given them life and dressed them in embroidered robes. They answered very well, as they were only wanted for show. After there had been a little dancing, the princess had told the magician that she had a new suitor, and asked him what he could think of for the suitor to guess when he came to the castle the next morning. "Listen to what I say," said the magician. "You must choose something very easy. He is less likely to guess it then. Think of one of your shoes. He would never imagine it is that. Then cut off his head. And mind you, do not forget to bring his eyes with you tomorrow night, that I may eat them." The princess curtsied low and said she would not forget the eyes. The magician then opened the mountain and she flew home again. But the traveler followed and flogged her so much with the rod that she sighed quite deeply about the heavy hailstorm, and made as much haste as she could to get back to her bedroom through the window. The traveler then returned to the inn where John still slept, took off his wings and lay down on the bed, for he was very tired. Early in the morning John awoke, and when his fellow traveler got up, he said he had a very wonderful dream about the princess and her shoe. He therefore advised John to ask her if she had not thought of her shoe. Of course, the traveler knew this from what the magician in the mountain had said.
"I may as well say that as anything,"
said John.
"Perhaps your dream may well come true. Still I will say farewell, for if I guess wrong, I shall never see you again."
Then they embraced each other, and John went into the town and walked to the palace. The great hall was full of people, and the judges sat in armchairs, with eider-down cushions to rest their heads upon, because they had so much to think of. The old king stood near, wiping his eyes with his white pocket handkerchief. When the princess entered, she looked even more beautiful than she had appeared the day before, and greeted everyone present most gracefully. But to John she gave her hand and said, "Good morning to you." Now came the time for John to guess what she was thinking of, and oh, how kindly she looked at him as she spoke. But when he uttered the single word, "shoe," she turned as pale as a ghost. All her wisdom could not help her, for he had guessed right. Oh, how pleased the old king was! It was quite amusing to see how he capered about. All the people clapped their hands, both on his account and John's, and who had guessed rightly the first time. His fellow traveler was glad also, when he had heard how successful John had been. But John folded his hands and thanked God, who he felt quite sure would help him again, and he knew he had guessed twice more. The evening passed pleasantly like the one preceding. While John slept, his companion flew behind the princess to the mountain and flogged her even harder than before. This time he had taken 2 rods with him. No one saw him go in with her, and he heard all that was... Wait, I just lost my spot. Where was I? What? No one saw him go in with her, and he heard all that was said. The princess this time was to think of a glove, and he told John as if he had heard it again in his dream. The next day, therefore, he was able to guess correctly the second time, and it caused great rejoicing at the palace. The whole court jumped about as they had seen the king do the day before, for the princess lay on the sofa and would not say a single word. All now depended upon John. If he only guessed rightly the third time, he would be able to marry the princess and reign over the kingdom after the death of the old king. But if he failed, he would lose his life, and the magician would have his beautiful blue eyes. That evening, John said his prayers and went to bed very early, and soon fell asleep calmly. But his companion tied on his wings to his shoulders, took 3 rods, and, with his sword at his side, flew to the palace. It was a very dark night, and so stormy that the tiles flew from the roofs of the houses, and the trees in the gardens upon which the skeletons hung bent themselves like reeds before the wind. The lightning flashed, and the thunder rolled in one long continued peal all night. The window of the castle opened, and the princess flew out. She was pale as death, but she laughed at the storm as if it were not bad enough, Her mantle fluttered in the wind like a large sail, and the traveler flogged her with the 3 rods till the blood trickled down, and at last she could scarcely fly. She contrived, however, to reach the mountain. "What a hailstorm!" she said as she entered. "I have never been out in such weather as this." "Yes, there may be too much of a good thing sometimes," said the magician. Then the princess told him that John had guessed rightly the second time, and if he succeeded the next morning he would win, and she could never come to the mountain again or practice magic as she had done before, and therefore she was quite unhappy. I will find out something for you to think of, which he will never guess, unless he is a great conjurer than myself. But for now, let us be merry." Then he took the princess by both hands, and they danced with all the little goblins and jack-o'-lanterns in the room. The red spiders sprang here and there on the walls quite as merrily, and the flowers of fire appeared as if they were throwing out sparks. The owl beat the drum, the crickets whistled, and the grasshoppers played the mouth organ. It was a very ridiculous ball. After they had danced enough, the princess was obliged to go home, for fear she would be missed at the palace. The magician offered to go with her. They might be company to each other on the way. Then they flew away through the bad weather, and the traveler followed them, and broke his 3 rods across their shoulders. The magician had never been out in such a hailstorm as this. Just by the palace, the magician stopped to wish the princess farewell and to whisper in her ear, "Tomorrow, think of my head." But the traveler heard it, and just as the princess slipped through the window into her bedroom, and the magician turned round to fly back to the mountain, he seized him by the long black beard, and with his saber cut off the wicked conjurer's head just behind the shoulders, so that he could not even see who it was. He threw the body into the sea to the fishes, and after dipping the head into the water, he tied it up in a silk handkerchief, took it with him to the inn, and then went to bed. The next morning, he gave John the handkerchief, and told him not to untie it till the princess asked him what she was thinking of. There were so many people in the great hall of the palace that he stood as thick as radishes tied together in a bundle. The council sat in their armchairs with white cushions. The old king wore new robes, and the golden crown and scepter had been polished up, so he looked quite smart. But the princess was very pale and wore a black dress as if she were going to a funeral. "What have I thought of?" asked the princess of John. He immediately untied the handkerchief, and was himself quite frightened when he saw the head of the ugly magician. Everyone shuddered, and for it was so terrible to look at, but the princess sat like a statue and could not utter a single word. At length she rose and gave John her hand, for he had guessed rightly. She looked at no one, but sighed deeply, and said, "You are my master now. This evening our marriage must take place." "I am very pleased to hear it," said the king. "It is just what I wish." Then all the people shouted, "Hurrah!" And the band played music in the streets, the bells rang, and the cake women took the black crepe off the sugar sticks. There was universal joy. 3 oxen, stuffed with ducks and chickens, were roasted whole in the marketplace, where everyone might help himself to a slice. The fountain spouted forth the most delicious wine, and whoever bought a penny loaf at the baker's received 6 large buns full of raisins as a present. In the evening, the whole town was illuminated. The soldiers fired off cannons, and the boys let off crackers. There was eating and drinking, dancing and jumping everywhere. In the palace, the high-born gentlemen and beautiful ladies danced with each other. They could be heard at a great distance singing the following song: "Here are the maidens, young and fair, dancing in the summer air. Like 2 spinning wheels at play, pretty maidens dance away. Dance and swing and summer through, till the soul falls from your shoe." Except it sounded a lot more better than that. But the princess was still a witch, and she could not love John. His fellow traveler had thought of that, so he gave John 3 feathers out of the swan's wings, and a little bottle with a few drops in it. He told him to place a large bath full of water by the princess's bed, and put the feathers and the drops into it. Then, at the moment she was about to get into bed, he must give her a little push, so so that she might fall into the water and dip her 3 times. This would destroy the power of the magician, and she would love him very much. John did all his companion told him to do. The princess shrieked aloud when he dipped her under the water the first time, and struggled under his hands in the form of a great black swan with fiery eyes. As she rose the second time from the water, the swan had become white, with a black ring round its neck. John allowed the water to close once more over the bird. At the same time, it changed into the most beautiful princess. She was more lovely than ever before, and thanked him, while her eyes sparkled with tears for having broken the spell of the magician. The next day, the king came with a whole court to offer their congratulations, and stayed till quite late. Last fall came the traveling companion. He had his staff in his hand and his knapsack on his back. John kissed him many times and told him he must go. He must remain with him. Must not go. Rather, he must not go. He must remain with him, for he was the cause of all his good fortune. But the traveler shook his head and said gently and kindly,
Now is not my stop. No, my time is up now. I have only paid my debt to you. Do you remember the dead man whom the bad people wished to throw out of his coffin? You gave me all that you possessed, that he might rest in his grave. I am that man.
As he said this, he vanished. The wedding festivities lasted a whole month. John and his princess loved each other dearly, and the old king lived to see many a happy day when he took their little children on his knees and let them play with his scepter, and John became king over the whole country. The end. The end, the end, the end. This is the end of The Traveling Companion. Like as I said, started off kind of sad, but it ended up pretty good, pretty happily, pretty darn happily. How'd you guys feel about the story? How'd you guys feel about the story, huh? Did you like it? I thought it was a pretty good story. It's a story about, how kindness can, bring you things that you would not expect, rather. I really liked it. Extremely good, 10 out of 10? Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I had to take a drink. I think I'm gonna take a 5-minute drink to, give my throat a break. It'll be just a short break, just to drink some water. And then we will continue with the third story, which is called This Fable is Intended for You. The third story is called This Fable is Intended for You. So once I'm done taking my break, I will be back and we'll continue the reading as I promised. I hope you guys do not mind waiting for me. Make me happy if you did. So I'll be right back. Okay. I think I'm gonna hiccup. But I'm not sure yet. Maybe. I can't tell, it's kind of stuck in my throat. The hiccup is kind of stuck in my throat. I'm not entirely sure. Anyways. I am back. We shall commence with the second story. Not second story, third story. Sorry, the third story. Well, he shall commence with the third story. The third story is, as the title suggests, this fable is intended for you. Whether or not that you means all of us, or just me, or who knows, but it is intended for you. Us alone. Who knows? Question mark. Anyways, let's begin. Wise men of ancient times ingeniously discovered how to tell people the truth without being blunt to their faces. You see, they held a magic mirror before the people, in which all sorts of animals and various wondrous things appeared, producing amusing as well as instructive pictures. They called these fables, and whatever wise or foolish deeds animals performed, the people would imagine themselves in their places and thereby think, this fable is intended for you. I'm so confused. Where am I? In this way, no one's feelings were hurt. Let us give you an example. There were two high mountains, and at the top of each stood a castle. In the valley below ran a hungry dog, sniffing along the ground as if in the search of mice or quail. Suddenly a trumpet sounded from one of the castles to announce that mealtime was approaching. The dog immediately started running up to the mountain, hoping to get his share. But when he was halfway up, the trumpeter ceased blowing, and a trumpet from the other castle commenced. Up here, thought the dog, they will finish eating before I arrive. But over there, they are just getting ready to eat. So he ran down and up the other mountain. But now the first trumpet started again, while the second stopped. The dog ran down again and up again, and he continued this until both trumpets stopped blowing, and the meals were over in both castles. Now guess what the wise men of ancient times would have said about this tale, and who the fool could be who runs himself ragged without gaining anything, either here or there. And that's the end of the story. Why does dark end with a K, but not a C? It's because you can't see the dark. That's a pretty good joke. Haha! I like it. I like the joke. I like the joke. That's a good joke, Meg. I like it. It's a good joke. It's a very simple joke as well. I do indeed like it. But yes, that is the end of the third story, which is the Fable tale. Welcome back. I've already finished the whole story. It's not a welcome back. I should say welcome back to you. Welcome back to you guys. Because I've already been back for almost 4 minutes. I finished a whole short story. You went to brush your teeth? Nope. A whole story went by. Yeah, a whole story went by. Tisk, yep. You missed the whole story. I'm not telling it again. You'll just have to accept your fate. Sorry, not sorry. Big sad? Oh well. Better luck next time, eh? Better luck next time. Shame on you for thinking I was gonna be AFK longer, huh? Shame on you. Okay. As this next title suggests, this story is called The Talisman. The story is called The Talisman. I actually don't remember what the story is like. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember this story at all, and I read through it. Oh, never mind. I remember what the story is. I lied. I remember what the story is. Sorry. I remember. So basically, to give a bit of information about the story without spoiling it, it is about a married, not really married, it's about a prince and princess, a happy prince and princess couple, a royal couple rather, who goes on a journey to attempt to ensure their happiness permanently, to attempt to ensure their internal happiness. So that is what this talisman is called. I'm already taking another drink. Don't drink. Okay. You guys ready? I hope you are. Thus, we have the talisman. A prince and princess were still celebrating their honeymoon. They were extremely happy. Only one thought disturbed them, and that was how to retain their present happiness. For that reason, they wished to own a talisman with which to protect themselves against any unhappiness in their marriage. Now they had often been told about a man who lived out in the forest, acclaimed by everybody for his wisdom and known for his good advice in every need and difficulty. So the prince and princess called upon him, told him about their heart's desire. After the wise man had listened to them, he said, "Travel through every country in the world, and whenever you meet a completely happily married couple, ask them for a small piece of linen they wear close to their body. And when you receive this, you must always carry it on you. That is a sure remedy." The prince and princess rode forth, and on their way they soon heard of a knight and his wife, who were said to be living the most happily married life. They went to the knight's castle and asked him and his wife if their marriage was truly as happy as was rumored. "Yes, of course," was the answer, with the one exception that we have no children. Here then the talisman was not to be found, and the prince and princess continued their journey in search of the completely happily married couple. As they traveled on, they came to a country where they heard of an honest citizen who lived in perfect unity and happiness with his wife. So to him they went, and asked if he was really as happily married as people said.
"Yes, I am,"
answered the man.
"My wife and I live in perfect harmony. If only we didn't have so many children, for they give us a lot of worries and sorrows."
So neither with him was a talisman to be found, and the prince and princess continued their journey through the country, always inquiring about happily married couples, but none presented themselves. One day, as they rode along fields and meadows, they noticed a shepherd close by the road, cheerfully playing his flute. Just then, a woman carrying a child in her arm and holding a little boy by the hand walked towards him. As soon as the shepherd saw her, he greeted her and took the little child, whom he kissed and caressed. The shepherd's dog ran to the boy, licked his little hand, and barked and jumped with joy. In the meantime, the woman arranged a meal she had brought along, and then said, "Father, come and eat now." The man sat down and took of the food, but the first bite he gave to the little boy, and the second he divided between the dog and the boy. The dog. All this was observed by the prince and princess, who walked closer and spoke to them, saying, "You must be a truly happily married couple."
"Yes, we are. Yes, that we are,"
said the man.
"God be praised! No prince and princess could be happier than we are." Now listen then,
said the prince.
"Do us a favor, and you shall never regret it. Give us a small piece of the linen garment you wear close to your body."
As he spoke, the shepherd and his wife looked strangely at each other, and finally he said,
"God knows would be only too happy to give you not only a small piece, but the whole shirt or undergarment. If only we had them, but we own not much as a rag."
So the prince and princess journeyed on, their mission unaccomplished. Finally, their unsuccessful roaming discouraged them, and they decided to return home. As they passed by the wise man's hut, they stopped by, related all their travel experiences, and reproached him for giving them such poor advice. At that, the wise man smiled and said,
"Has your trip really been all in vain? Are you not returning richer in knowledge?" "Yes," answered the prince. "I have gained this knowledge, that contentment is a rare gift on this earth."
"And I have learned," said the princess, "that to be contented, one needs nothing more than simply to be contented." Whereupon the prince took the princess's hand. They looked at each other with an expression of deepest love. And the wise man blessed them and said,
"In your own hearts you have found the true talisman. Guard it carefully, and the evil spirit of discontentment shall never in all eternity have any power over you."
And thus, that's the end of the talisman. Ta-da! Yay! Story ends. Very cute. It's a very cute story. It's a very, very cute story, honestly. Super, 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 super cute. Wholesomeness? Oh, wholesome? Yeah, it is incredibly wholesome. It's about as wholesome as it gets, really. It's really, really heartwarming. Hard not to like it, honestly. Hard not to like it. Yes? Mm-hmm. 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 It's got a good story to it. And still remains pure. Nothing bad happened. Overall, it was pretty good. Pretty good. That was adorable as heck. It was. It was. It was. It was. It really was. So thus, the next story we have is the Daisy. Sorry, my voice kind of cracked. I'll take a drink. Okay. But yes, the next story we have is the Daisy. The Daisy, I'm gonna be honest, is a really depressing story. It is a very, very sad story. The moral behind the Daisy is really just life sucks and don't be irresponsible. Just as a warning. There's really no happy ending to the story, unfortunately. So brace yourselves. This is not going to be a good feels trip. This is going to be a sad feels trip. There is no smiles to be found here by about the halfway point of the story. It does start cute at first. It starts out really cute at first, but yeah, doesn't work out too well by the end, unfortunately. Okay, you guys ready? I'm gonna hope you are. Gonna really hope you are, cause I am. It is well. Whoa, it's very big. You ready? You can take it. Okay. Okay. Let's do this. Let's do this. The Daisy. Actually, let me take a drink beforehand. I'm sorry. Let me take one last drink. Body? Okay. The Daisy. Now listen. In the country, close by the high road, stood a farmhouse. Perhaps you've passed by and seen it yourself. There is a little flower garden with painted wooden palings in front of it. Close by was a ditch. On its fresh green bank grew a little daisy. The sun shone as warmly and brightly upon it as on the magnificent garden flowers, and therefore it thrived. One morning it had quite opened, and its little snow-white petals stood round the yellow center, like the rays of the white of the sun. It did not mind that nobody saw it in the grass, and that it was a poor, despised flower. On the contrary, it was quite happy, and turned towards the sun, looking upward and listening to the song of the lark high up in the air. The little daisy was as happy as if the day had been a great holiday, but it was only Monday. I feel like I need to hiccup again, sorry. All the children were at school, and while they were sitting on the forms and learning their lessons, it sat on its thin green stalk and learned from the sun and from its surroundings how kind God is, and rejoiced that the song of the little lark expressed so sweetly and distinctly its own feelings. With a sort of reverence, the daisy looked up to the bird that could fly and sing, but it did not feel envious. I can see in here, it thought. The sun shines upon me, and the forest kisses me. How rich I am! In the garden close by grew many large and magnificent flowers, and strange to say, the less fragrant they had, the haughtier and prouder they were. The peonies puffed themselves up in order to be larger than the roses, but size is not everything. The tulips had the finest colors, and they knew it well too, for they were standing bolt upright like candles, that one might see them the better. In their pride they thought, how rich
and beautiful they are. I am sure the pretty bird will fly.
Wait, who is this? Oh, sorry, this is the daisy's perspective still. Sorry. How rich and beautiful they are. I am sure the pretty bird will fly down and call upon them. Thank God that I stand so near and can at least see all the splendor. And while the daisy was still thinking, the lark came down, flying down, crying, tweet! But not to the peonies or the tulips. No, into the grass to the poor daisy. Its joy was so great that it did not know what to think. The little bird hopped around it and sang, how beautifully the soft grass is, and what a lovely little flower with its golden heart and silver dress is going here. The little yellow center and the daisy did indeed look like gold, while the little petals shone as brightly as silver. How happy the daisy was! No one has the least idea. The bird kissed it with his beak, sang to it, and then it rose again up to the blue sky. It was certainly more than a quarter of an hour before the daisy recovered its senses. Half ashamed, yet glad at heart, it looked over to the other flowers in the garden. Surely they had witnessed its pleasure and the honor that had been done to it. They understood its joy. But the tulips stood more stiffly than ever. Their faces were pointed and red, because they were vexed. The peonies were sulky. It was well they could not speak, otherwise they would have given the daisy a good lecture. The little flower could very well see that they were ill at ease, and pitied them sincerely. Shortly after this, a girl came into the garden with a large sharp knife. She went to the tulips and began cutting them off one after the other. Ugh, sighed the daisy. That is terrible. Now they are all done for. The girl carried the tulips away. The daisy was glad that it was outside and only a small flower. It was very grateful. At sunset, it folded its petals and fell asleep, and dreamed all night of the sun and the little bird. On the following morning, when the flower once more stretched forth its tender petals, like little arms, towards the air and light, the daisy recognized the bird's voice, but what it sang sounded so sad. Indeed, the poor bird had good reason to be sad, for it had been caught and put into a cage close by the open window. It sang of the happy days when it could merrily fly about, of fresh green corn in the fields, and of the time when it could soar almost up to the clouds. The poor lark was most unhappy as a prisoner in a cage. The little daisy would have liked so much to help it, but what could be done? Indeed, that was very difficult for such a small flower to find out. It entirely forgot how beautiful everything around it was, how warmly the sun was shining, and how splendidly white its own petals were. It could only think of the poor captive bird, for which it could do nothing. Then 2 little boys came out of the garden. One had a large sharp knife like that with which the girl had cut the tulips. They came straight towards the little daisy, which could not understand what they wanted.
Here's a fine piece of turf for the lark,
said one of the boys, began to cut a square round the daisy, so it remained in the center of the grass.
Pluck the flower off,
said the other boy. The daisy trembled for fear, for to be pulled off meant death to it, and wished so much to live, as it was to go with the square of turf into the poor captive lark's cage.
No, let it stay,
said the other boy,
it looks so pretty.
and so it stayed, and was brought into the lark's cage. The poor bird was lamenting its lost liberty, and beating its wings against the wires, and little Daisy could not speak or utter a consoling word, much as it would have liked to do so. So the forenoon passed. "I have no water," said the captive lark. "They have all gone out, and forgotten to give me anything to drink. My throat is dry and burning. I feel as if I have fire and ice within me, and the air is so oppressive. Alas, I must die and part with the warm sunshine, the fresh green meadows, and all the beauty that God has created." And thus it thrust its beak into the piece of grass to refresh itself a little. Then it noticed the little daisy and nodded to it, and kissed it with its beak and said, "You must also fade in here, poor little flower. You and the piece of grass are all they have given me in exchange for the whole world, with that which I enjoyed outside. Each little blade of grass shall be like a green tree for me, each of your white petals a fragrant flower. Alas, you only remind me of what I have lost." "I wish I could console the poor lark, thought the daisy. It could not move one of its leaves, but the fragrance of its delicate petals streamed forth, and was much stronger than such flowers usually have. The bird noticed it, although it was dying with thirst, and its pain tore up the green blades of grass, but did not touch the flower. The evening came, and nobody appeared to bring the poor bird a drop of water. It opened its beautiful wings, and fluttered about in anguish. A faint and mourning "tweet tweet" was all it could utter. Then it bent its little head towards the flower, and its heart broke for want and longing. The flower could not, as on the previous evening, fold up its petals and sleep. It dropped sorrowfully. The boys only came the next morning. When they saw the dead bird, they began to cry bitterly. They dug a nice grave for it and adorned it with flowers. The bird's body was placed in a pretty red box. They wished to bury it with royal honors. While it was alive and sang, they forgot. it, and let it suffer want in the cage. Now they cried over it and covered it with flowers. The piece of turf with the little daisy in it was thrown out on the dusty highway. No one thought of the flower which had felt so much for the bird and had so greatly desired to comfort it. That is the end of the story. It is a sad as heck story. It's just a sad story of irresponsibility. It's pretty depressing. There's no good ending to it. The voice makes it all more tragic, yeah. Rip poor bird. That story is really sad. It is. It's a really, really depressing story about irresponsibility and just not giving in to whims and stuff like that. Not like this? Yeah, absolutely. It is a not like this. Yup. Good story regardless of yeah. Sorry, I'm taking a drink. Unfortunately for you guys, I've got bad news. The next story is also sad. The next story is also a sad story. It is also a sad story. The next story is called The Brave Tin Soldier. Bring it on. It's not as sad as this one, I don't think. I mean, actually it is kind of as sad as this one. To be honest, it is kind of as sad as this one. But at least with this story, there's a bit of a sort of, there's a bittersweet note to it is what I'm trying to say. The final few The final paragraph, final few paragraphs, has a bittersweet note to it. So there's a like molecule of happiness to be found in this story. You guys ready for the brave tin soldier? I feel like I need to hiccup again. Ooh, there you go. Yes, indeed. Ooh. Sorry. The hiccups are real. Yep. Okay, good. Good. Alright. I shall start then. The brave tin soldier. There were once 25 tin soldiers, who were all brothers, for they had been made out of the same old tin spoon. They shouldered arms and looked straight before them, and wore a splendid uniform, red and blue. The first thing in the world they ever heard were the words, "Tin soldiers," uttered by a little boy, who clapped his hands with delight when the lid of the box in which they lay was taken off. They were given him for a birthday present, and he stood out at the table to set them up. The soldiers were all exactly alike, excepting one, who had only one leg. He had been left to the last, and there was not enough of the melted tin to finish him, so they made him to stand firmly on one leg, and this caused him to be very remarkable. The table on which this tin soldier stood was covered with other playthings, but the most attractive to the eye was a pretty little paper castle. Through the small windows the rooms could be seen. In front of the castle a number of little trees surrounded a piece of looking glass, which was intended to represent a transparent lake. Swans, made of wax, swam on the lake and were reflected in it. All this was very pretty, but the prettiest of all was a tiny little lady who stood at the open door of the castle. She also was made of paper, and she wore a dress of clear muslin with a narrow blue ribbon over her shoulders, just like a scarf. In front of these was a fixed glittering tinsel rose, as large as her whole face. The little lady was a dancer, and she stretched out both of her arms, and raised one of her legs so high that the tin soldier could not see it at all, and he thought that she, like himself, had only one leg. That is the wife for me, he thought.
But she is too grand, and lives in a castle, while I have only a box to live in. 25 of us, altogether. That is no place for her. Still, I must try and make her acquaintance.
Then he laid himself at full length on the table behind a snuff box that stood upon it, so that he could peep at the little delicate lady, who continued to stand on one leg without losing her balance. When evening came, the other tin soldiers were all placed in the box, and the people of the house went to bed. Then the playthings began to have their own games together, to pay visits, to have sham fights, and to give balls. The tin soldiers rattled in their box. They wanted to get out and join the amusements, but they could not open the lid. The nutcrackers played at leapfrog, and the pencil leaped about the cable. There was such a noise that the canary woke up and began to talk, and in poetry too. Only the tin soldier and the dancer remained in their places. She stood on tiptoe, with her legs stretched out, as firmly as he did on his one leg. He never took his eyes from her, even for a moment. The clock struck 12, and with a bounce, up sprang the lid of the snuff-box. But instead of snuff, there jumped up a little black goblin, for the snuff-box was a toy puzzle. "Tin soldier," said the goblin, "do not wish for what does not belong to you." But the tin soldier pretended not to hear. "Very well, wait till tomorrow then," said the goblin. When the children came in the next morning, they placed the tin soldier in the window. Now, whether it was the goblin or who did it or the draught, it is not known, but the window flew open, and out fell the tin soldier, heels over head, from the 3rd story into the street beneath. It was a terrible fall, for he had came head downwards, his helmet and his bayonet stuck in between the flagstones, and his one leg up in the air. The servant maid and the little boy went downstairs directly to look for him, but he was nowhere to be seen, although once they nearly trod upon him. If he had called out, "Here I am," it would have been all right, but he was too proud to cry out for help while he wore a uniform. Presently it began to rain, and the drops fell faster and faster till there was a heavy shower. When it was over, 2 boys happened to pass by, and one of them said, Look, there's a tin soldier. He ought to have a boat to sail him. So they made a boat out of a newspaper and placed the tin soldier in it, sent him sailing down the gutter, while the 2 boys ran by the side of it and clapped their hands. Good gracious, what large waves arose in that gutter, and how fast the stream rolled on! For the rain had been very heavy. The paper boat rocked up and down and turned itself round sometimes so quickly that the tin soldier trembled, yet he remained firm. His countenance did not change. He looked straight before him and shouldered his musket. Suddenly the boat shot under a bridge which formed part of a drain, and then it struck, and it was as dark as the tin soldier's box.
Where am I going now?
Thought he.
This is the box, that goblin's fault. I'm sure. Oh, well, if the little lady were only here with me on the boat, I should not care for the darkness.
Suddenly there appeared a great water rat, who lived in the drain. Have you a passport? Wait, no. I need a different voice for that. Have you a passport? Asked the rat. Give it to me at once. But the tin soldier remained silent and held his musket tighter than ever. The boat sailed on, and the rat followed it. How did he gnash his teeth and cry out to the bits of wood and straw, Stop him! He has not paid the toll, and he has not shown his pass. But the stream rushed on stronger and stronger. The tin soldier could already see daylight shining where the arch ended. Then he heard a roaring sound quite terrible, enough to fright even the bravest man. At the end of the tunnel, the drain fell into a large canal over a steep place, which was made as dangerous for him as a waterfall would be to us. He was too close to it to stop, so the boat rushed on, and the poor tin soldier could only hold himself as stiffly as possible without moving an eyelid, to show he was not afraid. The boat whirled round 3 or 4 times, and then filled with water to the very edge. Nothing could save it from sinking. He now stood up to his neck in water, while deeper and deeper sank the boat, and the paper became soft and loose with the wet. Loose with the wet, till at last the water closed over the soldier's head. He thought of the elegant little dancer, whom he should never see again, and the words of the song sounded in his ears. Farewell, brave warrior, ever brave, farewell, warrior, ever brave, drifting onward to thy grave. Then the paper boat fell to pieces, and the soldier sank into the water, and immediately afterwards it was swallowed up by a great fish. Oh, how dark it was inside the fish! A great deal darker than in the tunnel, and narrower too. But the tin soldier continued firm, and lay at full length shouldering his musket. The fish swam to and fro, making the most wondrous movements, but at last he became quite still. After a while, a flash of lightning seemed to pass through him, and the daylight approached, and a voice cried out, I declare here is the tin soldier! The fish had been caught, taken to the market, and sold to the cook, who took him into the kitchen and cut him open with a large knife. She picked up the soldier, and held him by the waist between her finger and thumb, and carried him into the room. They were all anxious to see this wonderful soldier who had traveled about inside a fish, but he was not at all proud. They placed him on the table, and how many curious things do happen in the world! There he was, in the very same room from the window of which he had fallen. There were the same children, the same playthings, things, standing on the table, and the pretty castle with the elegant little dancer at the door. She still balanced herself on one leg, and held up the other, till she was as firm as himself. It touched the soldier so much to see her, that he almost wept 10 tears, but he kept them back. He only looked at her, and they both remained silent. Presently, one of the little boys took up the tin soldier, and threw him into the stove. He had no reason for doing so, therefore it must have been the fault of the black goblin who lived in the snuff box. The flames lighted up the tin soldier, and as he stood, the heat was very terrible. But whether it proceeded from the real fire or from the fires of love, he could not tell. Then he could see that bright colors were faded from his uniform, but whether they had been washed off during his journey, or from the effects of his sorrow, no one could say. He looked at the little lady, and she looked at him. He felt himself melting away, but he still remained firm with his gun on his shoulder. Suddenly, the door of the room flew open, and a draught of air caught up the little dancer. She fluttered like a sylph right into the stove by the side of the tin soldier, and was instantly in flames and was gone. Then the tin soldier melted down into a lump, and the next morning, when the maid servant took out the ashes of the stove, she found him in the shape of a little tin heart. But of the little dancer, nothing remained but the tinsel rose, which was burned black as a cinder. The end. The end. She's dead. She's dead. Yep, they're both dead. In the end, they both died. Yup. Yup. At least they died together, which is a bittersweet note to it. Like I said, they died together, so there is that happiness. But, other than that, there's no happiness to be found other than that, sadly. It is a true feels bad. The true feels bad. Okay. Thus, we move on to the seventh video. Yeah, the seventh story. The seventh story is called... Actually, sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. How'd you guys... I'm assuming, based on your reactions, that you guys all thought it was pretty sad. You guys all thought it was pretty sad? Any other thoughts about it? Other than misery and woe and depression? Any other thoughts besides that? Or is that about it? Is that about it? Well, sorry, thank you. It was really sad and depressing? Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Indeed, it was. It was a nice ending due to them dying together, so it was a good death, but tragic at the same time. Yeah. That's about it? Yes, indeed. 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 I'm gonna keep the story list right behind me. There's nowhere else to really put it. There's nowhere else to really put the story list. That was about as bittersweet. It was more like sweet bitty. That's all really well. That just makes inside it all. Thank you. I'm sorry that I'm doing a good job. I'm sorry that I'm doing a good job, I guess. I'm both happy that I'm doing a good job, and I feel bad that I'm doing a good job. Sorry, not sorry, I suppose. Sorry, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. I'm trying to figure out a color for the background stuff. Sorry. Maybe black would be fine. No, I should just keep it white. I'm just gonna keep it white. There you go. Good enough. You'll try to forgive me? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. If anyone ends up coming in late and wanting to see the story list, at least it's behind me so I can move myself real quick. I can move myself real quick and show them. But other than that, we're good. Okay. So next story is called The Flying Trunk. Yes. I went flying for a second. And you can see all the layers and how stuff is positioned. You can see all the layers. I move quick. Yep, I'm lightning fast. I'm lightning fast. Except not really. Lightning fast wouldn't be visible. What happened to my legs? Shh. Can't say that. Don't say that about. That's it. I'm out of here. You're talking trash about my legs. Don't say mean stuff to me. Don't say mean stuff to me. I'm not coming back until you apologize. You gotta apologize. I won't come back until you apologize. I'm waiting. Are you sorry? You like my legs? Thank you. You missed them? Thank you. Thank you. Unfortunately, this program does not allow. This program does not like legs, sadly. This program does not like legs. It is an unfortunate detail. You're sorry, come back? Okay. I'll come back then. I'll come back. Let me fix it again. Okay. There we go. There you go. There you go. Okay, I'm back. There. Okay. Okay. I'll take a drink and then I'll continue with the story. Welcome back. Thank you. So the next story is the flying chunk. It's a bit of a meme story, I'd say. As far as like seriously goes, I'd say it's a meme story. It doesn't have a good or a bad ending. It's just sort of a funny tale the whole way. It's not like your sides are gonna be in stitches sort of funny, but it's definitely an amusing story, I think. That's my thoughts. It's an amusing story. So, guys, after I take another drink, I will start the story. Okay. After I read this story, I'll probably take another break. After this story to drink more water. So that I can last the whole 3.5 to 4 hours. Okay. There once was a merchant who was so rich that he could have paved the whole street with gold. And he would even then have had enough for a small alley. But he did not do so. He knew the value of money better than to use it in this way. So clever was he that every shilling he put out brought him a crown. And so he continued till he died. And thus he continued till he died. Sorry, that was weird to say. His son inherited his wealth. I feel like you need to go again. No. His son inherited his wealth, and he lived a merry life with it. He went to a masquerade every night, made kites out of 5-pound notes, and threw pieces of gold into the sea instead of stones, making ducks and drakes out of them. In this manner he soon lost all his money. At last he had nothing but a pair of slippers, an old dressing gown, and 4 shillings. And now all his friends deserted him. They could not walk with him in the streets. But one of them, who was very good-natured, sent him an old trunk with this message: "Pack up." "Yes," he said.
Yeah, he said.
Sorry, I can't. My brain's not working.
Yeah,
He said.
it's all very well to say pack up.
But he had nothing left to pack up. Therefore he seated himself in the trunk. It was a very wonderful trunk. No sooner did anyone press on the lock than the trunk could fly. He shut the lid and pressed the lock, when away flew the trunk up the chimney with the merchant's son in it, right up into the clouds. Whenever the bottom of the trunk cracked, he was in a great fright, for if the trunk fell to pieces, he would have made a tremendous somerset over the trees. However, he got safely in his trunk to the land of Turkey. He hid the trunk in the wood under some dry leaves, and then went into the town. He could do so very well, for the Turks always go about dressed in dressing gowns and slippers, as he was himself. He happened to meet a nurse with a little child.
"I say, you, Turkish nurse,"
cried he,
what castle is near the town, with the windows placed up so high?"
The king's daughter lives there," she replied.
It has been prophesied that she will be very unhappy about a lover, and therefore no one is allowed to visit her, unless the king and queen are present. "Thank you."
Sorry, I just realized I kind of gave him the same voice.
The king's daughter lives there.
She replied.
It has been prophesied that she will be very unhappy about a lover, and therefore no one is allowed to visit her, unless the king and queen are present. "Thank you,"
said the merchant's son. So he went back to the wood, seated himself in his trunk, and flew up to the roof of the castle, and crept through the window into the princess's room. She lay on the sofa asleep, and she was so beautiful that the merchant's son could not help kissing her. Then she awoke and was very much frightened. But he told her that he was a Turkish angel who had come down through the air to see her, which pleased her very much. He was sat down by her side and talked to her. He said her eyes were like beautiful dark lakes in which the thoughts swam like little mermaids. And he told her that her forehead was a snowy mountain which contained splendid halls full of pictures. And then he related to her about the stork who brings the beautiful children from the rivers. These were delightful stories, and when he asked the princess if she would marry him, she consented immediately. "But you must come on a Saturday," said she, "for then the king and queen will take tea with me. They will be very proud when I find that I am to marry a Turkish angel. But you must think of some pretty little stories to tell them, for my parents like to hear stories better than anything. My mother prefers one that is deep and moral. My father likes something funny to make him laugh."
"Very well,"
replied he.
"I shall bring no other marriage portion than a story."
And so they parted. But the princess gave him a sword with which was studded with gold coins, and these he could use. Then he flew away to the town and bought a new dressing gown, and afterwards returned to the wood, where he composed a story so as to be ready for Saturday, which was no easy matter. It was ready, however, by Saturday, when he went to see the princess. The king and queen and the whole court were at tea with the princess, and he was received with great politeness.
"Will you tell us a story?"
Said the queen.
"One that is instructive and full of deep learning." "Yes, but with something in it to laugh at,"
said the king.
"Certainly,"
he replied, and commenced at once, asking them to listen attentively.
"There once was a bundle of matches that were exceedingly proud of their high descent. The genealogical tree, that is, a large pine tree from which they had been cut, was at one time a large, old tree in the wood. The matches now lay between a tinderbox and an old iron saucepan, and they were talking about their youthful days. Ah! Then we grew on
Wow, I can't speak, I'm sorry. Then we grew
on the old green boughs, and were as green as they. Every morning and every evening we were fed with diamond drops of dew. When the sun shone, we felt its warm rays, and the little birds relate stories to us as they sung. We knew we were very rich, for the other trees only wore their green dress in summer, but our family were able to array themselves in green, summer and winter. But the woodcutter came, like a great revolution, and our family fell under the axe. The head of the house obtained a situation as a mainmast in a very fine ship, and can sail round the world when he will. The other branches of the family were taken to different places, and our office is now to kindle light for common people. This is how such high-born people as we came to be in the kitchen.
"Mine has been a very different tale," said the iron pot.
Wait,
actually it's the same dude.
"Mine has been a very different fate," said the iron pot, which stood by the matches. "From my first entrance into the world I had been used to cooking and scoring. I'm the first in this house, when anything as solid or useful is required. My only pleasure is to be made clean and shining after dinner, and to sit in my place and have a little sensible conversation with my neighbors. All of us, excepting the water bucket, which is sometimes taken to the courtyard, live here together within these four walls. We eat our news from the market basket, but he sometimes tells very unpleasant things about the people and the government. Yes, and one day an old pot was so alarmed that he fell down and was broken to pieces. He was a liberal, I tell you." "You are talking too much," said the tinderbox, and the steel struck and the flint hill against the flint till some sparks flew out, crying, "You want a merry evening, don't we?" "Yes, of course," said the matches. "Let us talk about these who are highest of born." "No, I don't like to always be talking about what we are," remarked the saucepan. "Let us think of some of the other amusement. I will begin. We will tell something that has happened to ourselves. That will be very easy and interesting as well. On the Baltic Sea, near the Danish shore." "What a pretty commencement," said the plates. "We shall all like that story, I'm sure." "Yes, well, in my youth I lived in a quiet family where the furnace was polished, the floors scoured, and clean curtains put up every fortnight." "What an interesting way you have of relating a story," said the carpet broom.
I just lost my spot.
It is easy to perceive that you have been a great deal in the women's society. There is something so pure runs through what you say. That is quite true, said the water bucket, and he made a spring with joy, and splashed some water on the floor. Then the saucepan went on with his journey, and the end was as good as the beginning. The plates rattled with pleasure, and the carpet broom brought some green parsley out of the dust hole, and crowned the saucepan, for he knew it would vex the others. He thought, if I crown him today, he will crown me tomorrow. Now let us have a dance, said the fire tongs, and then how they danced and struck up one leg in the air. That chair cushion in the corner burst with laughter when she saw it. Shall I be crowned now? Asked the fire tongs, so the broom found another wreath for the tongs. They were only common people after all, thought the matches. The tea urn was now asked to sing, but she said she had a cold, could not sing without boiling heat. They all thought this was affectation, and because she did not wish to sing excepting in the parlor, went on the grand table with the grand people. And the window was set in a cold, quill pen with which the maid generally wrote. There was nothing remarkable about the pen, excepting that it had been dipped too deeply in the ink, but it was proud of that. If the tea urn won't sing, said the pen, she can leave it alone. There is a nightingale in the cage who can sing. She has not been taught much, certainly, but we need not say anything this evening about that. I think it's highly improper, said the tea kettle, who is a kitchen singer, and half-brother to the tea urn, that a rich foreign bird should be listened here. Is it patriotic? Let the market basket decide what is right. I am certainly vexed, said the basket, inwardly vexed more than anyone can imagine. Are we spending the evening properly? Would it not be more sensible to put the house in order? If each were in his own place, I would lead a game. This would be quite another thing. Let us act a play, they said. At the same moment the door opened and the maid came in. Then not one stirred, they all remained quite still. At the same time there was not a single pot amongst them who had not a high opinion of himself, and of what he could choose. What he could do if he chose. If we had chosen, they each thought we might have spent a very pleasant evening. Maid took the matches and lighted them. Dear me, how they sputtered up and blazed. Now then, they thought, everyone will see that we are the first. How we shine, and what a light we give. Even while they spoke, their light went out. What a grand story, said the queen. I feel as if I were really in the kitchen and could see the matches. Yes, you shall marry our daughter. Certainly, said the king. Thou shalt have our daughter. The king said thou to him, because he was going to be one of the family. The wedding day was fixed, and on the evening before, the whole city was illuminated. Cakes and sweetmeats were thrown among the people. The street boys stood on tiptoe and shouted, hurrah, and whistled between their fingers, although it was a very splendid affair. I will give them another treat, said the merchant's son. So he went and bought rockets and crackers, and all sorts of fireworks like we thought of, packed them in his trunk, and flew up with them into the air. What a whizzing and popping they made as they went off! The Turks, when they saw such a sight in the air, jumped so high that their slippers flew about their ears. It was easy to believe that the princess was really going to marry a Turkish angel. As soon as the merchant's son had come down in his flying trunk to the wood after the fireworks, he thought, I will go back into town tomorrow and hear what they think of the entertainment. It was very natural that he should wish to know. And what strange things people did say, to be sure. Everyone whom he questioned had a different tale to tell, though they all thought it was very beautiful. I saw the Turkish angel myself, said one. He had eyes like glittering stars, and head like foaming water. He flew in a mantle of fire, cried another, and lovely little cherubs peeped up out of the folds. He heard many more fine things about himself, and the very next day he was to be married. After this he went back to the forest to rest himself in his trunk. But it had disappeared! A spark from the fireworks which remained had set it on fire. It was burnt to ashes. So the merchant's son could not fly away any more, nor go to meet his bride. She stood all day on the roof waiting for him, and most likely she is still waiting there, while he wanders through the world telling fairy tales, but none of them so amusing as the one he related to about the matches. And that's it. That's the end of the flying trunk. Dun dun! Like I said, wasn't really a sad story, wasn't really a good story, it was just kind of a meme story. I'm going to read the comments in a second. Oh, Turkey as the country? Yeah, not as in the bird. Not as in the bird. Turkey as in the country. Turkey as in the country.
Although I can understand why you thought it'd be the bird. Cause this story has a lot of animals in it. Not the story, Hans Christian Andersen rather tells a lot of stories with birds in it. And animals and stuff like that. So it's reasonable to think. And it would have been the bird. What a creepo? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I'll try that next time I crawl into a woman's bedroom while she sleeps. Hey, I'm a Turkish angel. No! Don't do that. Don't do that. I really hope that no one is dumb enough to think that if someone climbs through their window, that they're going to be an angel. Unless they have, like, just please don't do that. If you see someone crawling through the window, and they don't look particularly magical, so like they don't have magic whooshing around them, or they don't have an actual pair of wings, they're probably a burglar or a kidnapper or something far worse. And you definitely should call the police. Please call the police if you find someone in your room that you do not know or do not want them to be there. Please, do not get yourself killed or worse. Now get yourself killed or worse. Yeah, call 911 immediately or whatever your country equivalent is. Call 911 or your country equivalent immediately. Please. For your own sake. For your own sake. Call for help immediately. Definitely more cheery and not towards either of the extremes. Yeah. It wasn't a super happy story. It wasn't a super sad story. It was just a story. It was just a fun story to tell. It was just a fun story to tell. It is just a fun story to tell. I have another hiccup actually. We have 2 more stories planned. And then I have some extras just to be safe. And I think it's a good thing that I do because I don't think that these 2 stories are gonna last us an hour and a half. So I'm glad that I found some extra stories to read. But we have 2 planned stories left. The next story that we'll be reading is the Storks. Officer, I have a weirdo in a trunk in my bedroom calling himself an angel. Yeah. No. That is so crazy. Put him in a hospital immediately. Don't let him hang out in your room. Get a weapon, smack him, and run. Run, get your phone, call the police, and hide. This is not okay. Don't let someone just stand there. Anyways, we have the stories to read. I'm gonna go take another water break because my chest is starting to burn a little bit. So I'm gonna take a water break and giggle about officers and creeps in windows. And then I'll be back and I'll read some more. I'll be back at 1 hour and 45 minutes stream time. So I'll be back in about 5.5 minutes. Okay. We're back. We're back. I'm going to read the Storks real quick, and then once I'm done reading the Storks, I'm gonna go and trade the water in my carrying cup for warm water instead. So I'll have a super mini break after the story to get warm water, and then I'll be back probably officially for the rest of the stream. Hope you guys don't mind. Okay, anyways, so, the Storks is exactly what it sounds like. It's about a family of Storks, and, the process of growing up, and, sorry, I'm trying to hear again. There you go. And the cruelty of children, really. Goodness gracious. So it's about kids being cool and Storks going up. Hi. Also, Eros is here now. Eros is here. Hi. Bye. Not bye. What you doing? I think she just woke up. She's been sleeping all day. She's probably pretty bored now. What you doing? Okay, bye. Maybe. Bye. The cold kids? Cruel, not cold. Cruel. As in mean. The mean kids, not the cold kids, not the cool kids. The cruel kids. Sorry that I don't speak quite clearly enough. Anyways. Yes, Eros has arrived. Looking as cute as always. But he was not supposed to be there. I mean, even if it is, they're still not cool kids. They're mean kids. Anyways. So, I will now read the Storks. I will now read the Storks. The last house. Wait, what? On the last house, in a little village, the Storks had built a nest, and the mother Stork sat in there with her 4 young ones, who stretched out. Where's my other glove? Sorry. Oh, there it is. Who stretched out their necks and pointed their back beaks, which had not yet turned red like those of the parent birds. A little way off, on the edge of the roof, stood the father Stork, quite upright and stiff, not liking to be quite idle. And not liking to be quite idle, he drew up on one leg, stood on the other, and so still that it was, it seemed almost as if he were carved in wood. It must look very grand, thought he, for my wife to have a sentry guarding her nest. They do not know that I am her husband. They will think I have been commanded to stand here, which is quite aristocratic. You're gonna go lay down and try to get some sleep, but you'll be listening until you're not off? Okay. Thank you for stopping by in case you fall asleep early. Thank you. Thank you for coming by. Goodbye. Farewell. Sleep well when you finally fall asleep. Thank you. Thank you for coming by. And goodbye. Sort of. Good night. Hi, you. Where was I? In the street below were a number of children at play, and when they caught sight of the Storks, one of the thanks for stepping on my keyboard. One of the boldest amongst the boys began to sing a song about them, and very soon he was joined by the rest. These are the words of the song, but each only sang what he could remember of them in his own way. Stork, stork, fly away. Stand not on one leg, I pray. See your wife is in her nest, with her little ones at rest. They will hang one and fry another. Then they will shoot a bird and roast his brother. Just hear what those boys are singing. said the young storks.
They will say, well, we shall be roasted and hanged. Never mind what they say. You need not listen,
said the mother.
They can do no harm.
But the boys went on and singing and pointing at the storks and mocking them, excepting one of the boys whose name was Peter. He said it was a shame to make fun of animals and would not join them at all. The mother stork comforted her young ones and told them not to mind.
See,
she said,
how quiet your father stands, although he is only on one leg.
Wait, sorry, that was the wrong voice.
See, how quiet your father stands, although he is only on one leg. We are very much frightened,
said the young storks, and they drew their heads back into the nests. And the next day, when the children were playing together and they saw the storks, they sang the song again. They will hang one and roast another.
Shall we be hanged and roasted?
asked the young storks.
No, certainly not,
said the mother.
I will teach you to fly, and when you have learnt, we will fly into the meadows and pay a visit to the frogs, who will bow themselves to us in the water and cry, croak, croak. And then we shall eat them up, and that will be fun. And what next?
asked the young storks.
Then,
replied the mother,
all the storks in the country will assemble together and go through their autumn maneuvers. So it is very important that everyone to know how to fly properly. If they do not, the general will thrust them through with his beak and kill them. Therefore, you must take pains and learn, so as to be ready for when the drilling begins. Then we may be killed, as the boys say. And hark, they are singing again. Listen to them and not to me. Listen to me and not to them.
Whoops, that was reversed.
Listen to me and not to them,
said the mother stork.
After the great review is over, we shall fly away to warm countries from hence, where there are mountains and forests. To Egypt, where we shall see 3-cornered houses built of stone, with pointed tops that reach nearly to the clouds. They are called pyramids, and they are older than a stork could imagine. And in that country there is a river that overflows its banks, and then goes back, leaving nothing but mire. There we can walk about and eat frogs in abundance.
Oh, oh! cried the young storks.
Yes, it is a delightful place. There is nothing to do all day but long but eat. And while we are so well off out there, in this country there will be not a single green leaf on the trees. And the weather will be so cold that the clouds will freeze, and fall on the earth in little white rags.
The stork meant snow, which he could not explain it any other way.
Will the naughty young boys freeze and fall in pieces?
asked the young storks.
No, they will not freeze and fall in pieces,
said the mother.
But they will be very cold, and be obliged to sit all day in a dark, gloomy room, while we shall be flying about in foreign lands, where there are blooming flowers and warm sunshine.
Time passed on, and the young storks grew so large that they could stand upright in the nest and look about them. The father brought them, every day, beautiful frogs, little snakes, and all kinds of stork dainties that he could find. And then, how funny it was to see the tricks he would perform to amuse them. He would lay his head quite round over his tail and clatter with his beak, as if it had been a rattle. And then he would tell them stories all about the marshes and fens.
Come,
said the mother one day,
now you must learn to fly.
And all the 4 young ones were obliged to come out on top of the roof. Oh, how they tottered about at first, and were obliged to balance themselves with their wings, or they would have fallen to the ground below.
Look at me, said the mother. You must hold your heads this way, and place your feet so. Once, twice, that is it.
Oh, say.
Once, twice, that is it. Now you'll be able to take care of yourselves in the world.
Then she flew a little distance from them, and the young ones made a spring to follow her. But down they fell plump, for the bodies were still too heavy.
I don't want to fly,
said the young storks, creeping back into the nest.
I don't care about going to the warm countries. Would you like to stay here and freeze when the winter comes?
said the mother.
Or till the boys come to hang you, or to roast you? Well, I'll call them. Oh, no,
said the young stork,
jumping out on the roof.
Jumping on the roof with the others, And now they were all attentive, and by the third day they could fly a little. Then they began to fancy they could soar, so they tried to do so, resting on their wings. But they soon found themselves falling, and had to flap their wings as quickly as possible. The boys came again in the streets, singing their song, "Stork, stork, fly away."
"Shall we fly down and pick their eyes out?"
asked the young storks.
"No, leave them alone,"
said the mother.
"Listen to me. That is much more important. Now then, 1, 2, 3. Now to the right.
Wait, what?
1, 2, 3. Now to the left, round the chimney. There now, that was very good. The last flap of the wings was so easy and graceful that I shall give you permission to fly with me tomorrow to the marshes. There will be a number of very superior storks there with their families, and I expect you to show them that my children are the best brought up of any who may be present. You must strut about proudly. It will look well and make you respected. But may we not punish those naughty..."
Whoa, that scared me. Hey, thank you for the follow. Is it Masiak? Is it Makiak? I'm sorry. How do you pronounce your name? How do you pronounce your name? Please tell me. Please tell me. Please tell me. How do you pronounce your name? Also, thank you for the follow. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for the follow. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Welcome, welcome. Please tell me how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. I wish I knew how to pronounce it immediately, but please feel free to tell me how to pronounce your name. We'll keep an eye on chat so I can pronounce it better. And thank you for the follow. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Where was I? Where was I? Where was I? Where was I?
No, let them scream away as much as they like. You can fly from now up high amid the clouds, and be in the land of the pyramids when they are freezing, and have not a green leaf on the trees or an apple to eat. We will revenge ourselves,
whispered the young storks to each other as they again joined the exercising. Of all the boys in the street who sang the mocking song about the storks, no one was so determined to go on with it as he who first began it. He was a little fellow not more than 6 years old. What was I? The young storks he appeared at least 100, for he was so much bigger than their father and mother. To be sure, storks cannot be expected to know how old children and grown-up people are, so they determined to have their revenge on this boy, because he began the song first and would keep on with it. The young storks were very angry and grew worse as they grew older. So at last, their mother was obliged to promise that they should be revenged, but not until the day of their departure. I have a very sweet voice. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. That makes me happy. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. Where was I?
You must see first how you acquit yourself at the grand review,
said she.
If you get on badly there, the general will thrust his beak through you, and you will be killed, as the boys said, though not exactly in the same manner. So you must wait and see. You shall see,
said young birds, and they took such pains and practiced so well every day that at last it was quite a pleasure to see them fly so lightly and prettily. As soon as the autumn arrived, all the storks began to assemble together before taking their departure for warm countries during the winter. Then the review commenced. They flew over forests and villages to show them what they could do, for they had a long journey before them. The young storks performed their part so well that they received a mark of honor, with frogs and snakes as a present. These presents were the best part of the affair, for they could eat the frogs and snakes, which they very quickly did.
Now let us have our revenge,
they cried.
Yes, certainly,
cried the mother stork.
I've thought up the best way to be revenged. I know the pond in which all the little children lie, waiting till the storks come to take them to their parents. The prettiest little babies lie there, dreaming more sweetly than they will ever dream in the time to come. All parents are glad to have a little child, and children are so pleased with a little brother or sister. Now we will fly to the pond, and fetch a little boy for each of the children who did not sing that naughty song to make game of the storks. But the naughty boy, who began the song first, what shall we do to him?
Cried the young storks.
There lies the point. There lies in the pond a little dead baby, who has dreamed itself to death,
said the mother.
We will take it to the naughty boy. There he will cry because we have brought him a little dead brother. but you have not forgotten the good boy who said it was a shame to laugh at the animals. You will take him a little brother and sister too, because he was good. He is called Peter, and you shall all be called Peter in future."
So that's what they did. So what they all did what their mother had arranged. And from that day, even till now, all the storks have been called Peter. And that's it. That's the end of the story. That's the end of the stories. All these stories are beautiful, are brutal. Yeah. All these stories have very brutal endings, or like brutal parts of the story. There is no sort of soft edges. Sometimes we have wholeness, but there's always like some underlying harshness to the story. It's kind of terrifying. Yes, all storks are now called Peters apparently. You have heard it from here. They're all called Peters. I don't know where that comes from, but that certainly goes over my head. Currently, in current times, that goes over my head. People were way more hardcore back then. Yeah, that's true. Granted, things were a lot harder back then, so it kind of makes sense that things were harder. That things were people were harsher, had harsher tastes, I guess. Anyways, the next story is called The Elf of the Rose, and I will tell you guys more about it after I go get some warm water. I will be right back really quickly. Okay. What is this? Chancy? Okay. I'm back. I took a few seconds longer than I intended to because one of the cats started trying to fight with another cat. So I had to take a little moment to get them to stop. It was Loki trying to pick on Eros again. He saw her come out of my room and he immediately thought he'd go after her, so I had to stop it. He really does not like his sister. Welcome back. Thank you. Thank you. I got my warm water. Let me see if it's hot. It's still hot to drink, unfortunately. It's too hot to drink. We are at the last officially planned story. And then after that, I have... If I run out of the officially planned stories, I also have 4 more to read, but I'll probably read them a little more slowly just to make sure I get everything right. So, anyways, the last story, I'm gonna take a quick drink. Okay. Anyways, we have the story called The Elf of the Rose. He had a story called The Elf of the Rose. This story is about, technically speaking, 4 people total. The rose, the elf, and then a brother and sister, and a male lover. And this story does not have a happy ending, unfortunately. It has a very, very depressing ending. It's a revenge sort of story. It's a revenge story. It is a revenge story, unfortunately. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how this goes. We'll see how this goes. Anyways. The Elf of the Rose. Wow, my voice just cracked already. I'm sorry. Let me take a drink. Okay, let me try again. The Elf of the Rose. In the midst of the garden grew a rose tree in full blossom. And the prettiest of all the roses lived an elf. He was such a wee little thing that no human eye could see him. Behind each leaf of the rose he had a sleeping chamber. He was as well formed and as beautiful as a little child could be, and had wings that reached from his shoulders to his feet. Oh, what sweet fragrance there was in his chambers, and how beautiful and clean the walls were, for they were blushing leaves of the rose. During the whole day he enjoyed himself in the warm sunshine. Hold on, my throat is burning. I'm sorry. I need a drink. Okay. Where was I? In the midst of a garden wait, no, I already read that. I'm sorry. Oh, during the whole day he enjoyed himself in the warm sunshine, flew from flower to flower, and danced on the wings of the flying butterflies. Then he took it into his head to measure how many steps he would have to go through the road and the crossroads that are on a leaf of a linen tree. What we call the veins of a leaf he took for roads, aye, and very long roads they were for him. But before he had half finished his task, the sun went down. He commenced his work too late. It became very cold. The dew fell, the wind blew, so he thought the best thing he could do would be to return home. He hurt himself as much as he could, but he found the roses all closed up, and he could not get in. Not a single rose stood open. The poor little elf was very much frightened. He had never before been out at night, but had always slumbered secretly behind the warm rose leaves. Oh, this would certainly be his death. At the other end of the garden, he knew there was an arbor, overgrown with beautiful honeysuckles. I just lost my spot. The blossoms looked like large painted horns, and he thought to himself he would go and sleep in one of these till morning. He flew thither, but hush! 2 people were in the arbor, a handsome young man and a beautiful lady. They sat side by side, and wished that they might never be obliged to part. They loved each other very much more than the best child can love its father and mother.
But we must part,
said the young man.
Your brother does not like our engagement, and therefore he sends me so far away on business, over mountains and seas. Farewell, my sweet bride, for so you are to me.
And then they kissed each other, and the girl wept and gave him a rose. Before she did so, she pressed a kiss upon it so fervently that the flower opened. Then the little elf flew in and leaned his head on the delicate fragment walls. Here he could plainly hear them say, "Farewell, farewell," and he felt that the rose had been placed on the young man's breast. Oh, how did his heart beat! The little elf could not go to sleep, it thumped so loudly. The young man took it out as he walked through the dark wood alone, and kissed the flower so often and so violently that the little elf was almost crushed. He could feel through the leaf how hot the lips of the young man were, and how the rose had opened, as if from the heat of the noonday sun. There came another man, who looked gloomy and wicked. He was the wicked brother of the beautiful maiden. He drew out a sharp knife, and while the other was kissing the rose, the wicked man stabbed him to death. Then he cut off his head, and buried it with the body in the soft earth under the linen tree.
Now he's gone, will soon be forgotten,
thought the wicked brother.
He will never come back again. He was going on a long journey over mountains and seas. It is easy for a man to lose his life on such a journey. My sister will suppose he's dead, for he cannot come back, and she will not dare to question me about him."
Then he scattered the dry leaves over the earth with his foot and went home through the darkness. But he went not alone as he thought. The little elf accompanied him. He sat in a dry, rolled-up linen leaf, which had fallen from the tree on the wicked man's head, as he was digging the grave. The hat was on the head now, which made it very dark, and the little elf shuddered with fright and indignation at the wicked deed. Hold on, I need a drink. Okay. It was the dawn of morning before the wicked man had reached home. He took off his hat and went into his sister's room. There lay the beautiful, blooming girl, dreaming of him whom she loved so, who was now, she supposed, traveling far away over mountain and sea. Her wicked brother stopped over her and laughed hideously, as fiends can only laugh. The dry leaf fell out of his hair upon the counterpane. He did not notice it, though, and went to get a little sleep during the early morning hours. But the elf slipped out of the withered leaf, placed himself by the ear of the sleeping girl, and told her, as in a dream, of the horrid murder, described the place where her brother had slain her lover and buried his body, and told her of the linden tree in full blossom that stood close by. "That you may not think this is only a dream that I have told you," he said, "you will find on your bed a withered leaf." Then she woke and found it there. Oh, what bitter tears, she said. She could not open her heart to anyone for relief. I needed that drink, I'm sorry. The window stood open the whole day, and the little elf could have easily reached the roses or any of the flowers, but he could not find it in his heart to leave one so afflicted. And the window stood a bush bearing monthly roses. He seated himself in one of the flowers and gazed on the poor girl. Her brother often came into the room and be quite cheerful in spite of his base conduct, so she dared not say a word to him of her heart's grief. As soon as night came on, she slipped out of the house and went into the wood to the spot where the linden tree stood, and after removing the leaves from the earth, she turned it up, and there she found him who had been murdered. Oh, how she wept and prayed that she might also die. Gladly she would have taken the body home with her, but that was impossible. So he took up the poor head with the closed eyes, kissed the cold lips, and shook the mold out of his beautiful hair. "I will keep this," said she, and as soon as she had covered the body again with the earth and leaves, she took the head and the little sprig of jasmine that bloomed in the wood, near the spot where he was buried, and carried them home with her. As soon as she was in her room, she took the largest flower pot she could find, and in this she placed the head of the dead man, covered it up with earth, and planted the twig of jasmine in it. "Farewell, farewell," whispered the little elf. He could not any longer endure to witness all this agony of grief. He therefore flew away to his own rose in the garden. But the rose was faded. Only a few dry leaves still clung to the green hedge behind it.
"Alas, how all that is good and beautiful passes away,"
sighed the elf. After a while he found another rose, which became his home. For among its delicate fragrant leaves he could dwell in safety. Every morning he flew to the window of the poor girl, and found her weeping by the flower pot. The bitter tears fell upon the jasmine twig, and each day, as she became paler and paler, the sprig appeared to grow greener and fresher. One shoot after another sprouted forth, and little bright buds blossomed, which the poor girl fondly kissed. But her wicked brother scolded her and asked her if she was going mad. He could not imagine why she was weeping over that flower pot, and it annoyed him. He did not know whose closed eyes were they, nor what red lips were fading beneath the earth. And one day she sat and leaned her head against the flower pot, and the little elf with the rose found her asleep. Then he seated himself by her ear, talked to her of the evening in the arbor, of the sweet perfume of the rose, and the loves of the elves. Sweetly she dreamed, and while she dreamt, her life passed away calmly and gently, and her spirit was with him with him whom she loved in heaven. And the jasmine opened its large white bells, and spread forth its sweet fragments. It had no other way of showing its grief for the dead. But the wicked brother considered the beautiful blooming plant as his own property, left him by his sister, and he placed it in his sleeping room, close by his bed, for it was very lovely in appearance, and the fragrance sweet and delightful. The little elf of the rose followed it, and flew from flower to flower, telling each little spirit that dwelt within them the story of the murdered young man, whose head now formed part of the earth beneath them, and of the wicked brother and the poor sister. "We know it," said each little spirit in the flowers. "We know it, for we have not sprung from the eyes and lips of the murdered one. We know it, we know it." And the flowers nodded with their heads in a peculiar manner. The elf of the rose could not understand how they would rest so quietly in the matter, so he flew to the bees who were gathering honey, and told them of the wicked brother. And the bees told it to their queen, who commanded that the next morning they should go and kill the murderer. But during the night, the first after the sister's death, when the brother was sleeping in his bed, close to where he had placed the fragrant jasmine, every flower cupboard opened, and visibly little spirits stole out, armed with poisonous spears. They placed themselves by the ear of the sleeper, told him dreadful dreams, and then flew across his lips and pricked his tongue with their poisonous spears. "Now we have revenged the dead," said they, and flew back into the white bells of the jasmine flowers. When the morning came, and as soon as the window opened, the rose elf, with the queen bee and the whole swarm of bees, rushed in to kill him. But he was already dead. People were standing round the bed and saying that the scent of the jasmine had killed him. And the elf of the rose understood the revenge of the flowers, and explained it to the queen bee, and she, with the whole swarm, buzzed about the flower pot. The bees could not be driven away. Then a man took it up to remove it, and one of the bees stung him in the hand, so that the flower pot fell, and it was broken to pieces. Then everyone saw the whitened skull, and they knew the man dead in the bed was a murderer. And the queen bee hummed in the air, and sang of the revenge of the flowers, and of the white elf of the rose, and said that behind the smallest leaf dwells the one who discovered evil deeds and punished them so. The end. The end. Like I said, it was a revenge story. But not in the way you'd think, rather. Not in the way you'd think. That one was crazy? It was. It sure was. It was crazy. It was very peculiar, one might say. I wonder if you guys can hear. You guys can, that's funny. But yes, that was a crazy story. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Indeed, indeed. As much as I normally continue longer, I'm starting to feel very sick, unfortunately. So I think what I'm gonna do is probably add on an extra half an hour to tomorrow's storytime stream. And rather than it being a 2-hour stream, it'll be a 2.5-hour stream. So for that, I apologize, I'm ending it a little early, but I am feeling very sick, and my throat is burning terribly. So I apologize for ending it early. Like I said, I'll make it up tomorrow as best I can. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know that it doesn't quite make up for Monday and Tuesday being cancelled, but I'm hoping that I made some of you guys happy with the reading. I hope I made some of you guys happy with the reading. I had fun. I enjoyed reading you guys. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys had fun too. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. I don't know what I'll be reading tomorrow. I genuinely can't tell you what I'll be reading. So it is very, very, very unplanned, of course. It's very unplanned. So, I'm sorry. Sorry that I can't tell you what to expect from tomorrow. Maybe the brain throat is pain. It's not that bad. But I'm worried that I'm gonna be sick on stream, and that would be absolutely awful. That's my concern. So it's great. Storytime's always fun. I'm glad that it's always fun. Most of you don't make up for those sort of things. So you guys are thankful. We're getting nice stories. I'm glad. I always feel really guilty when we have internet problems. I always feel really, really guilty. So I'm glad that this does make it up in some way. I'm glad. I'm really, really glad. Anyways, I'm gonna leave now. I hope that you guys sleep well when you do. Hopefully this made you nice and sleepy and relaxed. If it's midday for you and you don't plan on sleeping yet, then I hope that at least my story time made you feel peaceful. And like I said, hope to see you guys tomorrow. Thank you, Masiek or Makiek, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name still, for the follow. I really, really appreciate it. Welcome, 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 welcome again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And anyways, goodbye, guys. Goodbye. Farewell. See you guys tomorrow. Bye, bye.